Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in, and really quickly I'm going to say, look, no mustache. A year from now when this is in some random jet playlist and people are watching this video, they're going to be like, why is he talking about his mustache? But anyway, that was fun to do. Thank you so much for all your comments and votes, and it was really entertaining to read everything. And I got some really good Halloween ideas for the future. Okay, on to the topic at hand, and the reason you clicked on this video most likely is the topic of discipline in the classroom. As a teacher in Japan, specifically as an ALT in a public school, how do you handle discipline? I recently had a PM from a UK jet applicant who got notice that she got an interview. Yay! And she asked me, what if I'm asked in the interview, how would I handle a disruptive student, etc. So I guess the first thing I should say is I really don't have a lot to say on this subject. And having said that, of course, I will probably end up, talking for the next 9 minutes. I just didn't really have that hard a time with any of my kids over my entire 5 years. I really, I always used to joke with my other ALTs, friends, that I really had country mice, that my kids were just really, for the most part, very polite, very attentive, well-behaved kids. Of course I had incidents. Of course I had kids that were disruptive. But I never had anything, really major, and believe me, I've heard stories. I also never taught in high school, where the kids, of course, are a lot older and could potentially, be bigger than you depending on your size. Now, one thing I should say off the bat, and I mean you guys all know this, is I'm a very large human. And for Shogakse elementary school students, and most of my junior high school students, and most Japanese adults for that matter, I'm a very large person. And I'm a man. Women, you may have different problems than I faced as a teacher. But I think, certainly if a student was being disruptive, if I just went over and stood over them, especially if I know you guys have never seen me in the classroom, but I was just always so positive and Genki, almost every day, that the kids knew fairly quickly if I was displeased. If I were serious or glowered at them or something like that, they knew. And this came, obviously this wasn't my first 6 months in Japan. I mean, the advantage to staying as long as I did is I really did develop a relationship. So a kid who was a 9th grader and being, bad in class is potentially a kid that I taught for, since they were a 5th or 6th grader in elementary school. So going to what would you do with a disruptive student, I say, possibly contrary to better wisdom about how to deal with this situation, I say make that student your friend. They're doing it in a way to get attention, but I say give them that attention, because you only have 45 minutes or 50 minutes to try to get over whatever English point or lesson you're trying to do. And you really don't have time, most of the time, if it's a good lesson, to give way to a student that's being disruptive. Now, before I get in on the ways to befriend it and diffuse situations, I should say that we're told often at orientation, etc., as JETs specifically, that discipline is not our responsibility, that as an ALT you're not responsible for disciplining students in the classroom. And one thing you have to know and realize right away is that the way they discipline students in Japan is quite different than you might be used to, especially if you're from the West. And I found out that it's even different from, say, England to America to Australia and other countries where ALTs come from in Japan. The idea of going to the principal's office, of detention, these types of things, taking a student out of class into the hallway or something, these things never happen in Japan. There is no system like that. There is no way to handle situations like that. Basically, in Japan, most of your students are going to be in a homeroom, and the homeroom teacher is really responsible for their behavior. So if you really had a problem with a student, you would go see that person. Sometimes that also might be an English teacher, but you're not going to be in their history class or their math class for the most part or whatever. You're going to be in their English class, which means that the teacher in charge is going to be the JTE, the Japanese teacher of English, or it's going to be the homeroom teacher if you're in elementary school. Hopefully that person, has control of the class and demands some modicum of respect, and the students will behave. Any ALT will tell you, though, that they have taught with a teacher, myself included, who didn't command that kind of respect. Oftentimes, it was newer teachers who maybe, have only been teaching for a few years and hadn't really gotten into the rhythm of how to control their classes effectively. And it can be distracting. You can tell, when students are not paying attention. But, and I know this is going to sound a little egotistical, this often didn't happen with me when I was in the classes with them, because when I came to class, the students knew, for the most part, that we were going to do something interesting or going to do something fun. And I was going, even if, the teacher kind of only gave me 20 minutes and the other 40 minutes, or that 35 minutes, were going to be more grammar, translation, something more dry and boring. The students knew by my simple presence in the class that something interesting was going to happen, an activity, a game, just simple read and repeat with me instead of the teacher. So that in itself oftentimes would get the kids kind of more attentive and less disruptive. Now, of course, if a kid just wants to sleep or doodle, draw anime, manga figures in their notebook or something and aren't paying attention, that's no big deal. The main thing I think that you guys are asking about is the kids who are, audibly disruptive. I would just go over and stand near them sometimes, because generally the teacher is going to be conducting the class in the front of the class, and I would be standing to the side, waiting to participate, and I could walk the rows, walk the aisles, and just go over to that student and kind of give them the look. If it's elementary school and the kid is really acting out, hopefully, again, if in elementary school, you're usually the one who's more in control of the classroom and the flow of the lesson. So you're hoping that the homeroom teacher would go over to that student and try to quiet them down or whatever. But also that's the perfect time when you need a volunteer, or you're doing a game and you need someone to come up and, do the bingo game or guess the card, or, even if they're raising their hand to say the name of the animal or something, that's the student you call on. Sometimes even if they're not raising their hand, and you get them involved like that, and it will definitely maybe shift their attention away from, picking on the person next to them, or poking the girl in front of them or something like that. In the rare instance that you have a student really being just out of control, you have to just handle it the best you can, and rely on the Japanese staff around you to back you up and do their jobs, because it really isn't your job to worry about that. And there's all kinds of factors that make that the right way to approach it, because most of you won't speak the language entirely. There's factors about that student that even if you kind of think that you know about them, you might not know about what's going on in their home life. You might not know about what's happening that week or something, and the homeroom teacher is much more tuned into all these things, and just in a way that you could never be, even if you feel like you're friendly with that student. And I will admit that over the 5 years, there were, once or twice where I really did get upset about the way students were the way students were acting in class. And I even lost my temper twice. I can remember 2 times. And I regret it. But at the time, you're only human. So it is going to happen, and you try to minimize those moments. But discipline, it's tricky. How do you deal with a disruptive student? Involve them in the activity. Give them something to focus on other than, being disruptive. Befriend them, talk to them, learn their name, Oftentimes they want attention, but sometimes those crazy kids who are really just kind of goofball and, bouncing around, really are interested in English or you or the country you're from, and they just want attention. So do your best, and thanks for watching as always. See, it went over 10 minutes. Okay. Next time, thanks.